Hey everybody, welcome back to the Chaotic Little Book Corner. My name's Acacia. Today I'm going to be doing my December wrap up, and whoa boy, you guys want to go get some food and a drink because this is going to be a long one. I have 18 books here. I read 30 books in 31 days, actually 31 books in 31 days to be precise. So I've already done part 1, which I will link down below, of my wrap up, and this is part 2. So this is in order from least to most enjoyed. I have so many books here that I'm going to kind of breeze through them. If you guys want to see full reviews of like single books, let me know in the comments below what you would like to see, and I'll go more into depth on those books. But other than that, this is going to be an overview of them. I think there's a couple that I might want to do full in-depth reviews of. One of them I know I'm going to be doing a full in-depth review of, but it's going to be kind of a joint review with other books, and I'll explain why when I get there. But yeah, enough chatting. Let's go. So the first book I enjoyed the least is Attic by Katherine Dunn, and this is the author of Geek Love, which I really enjoyed, and so I was excited to read her novella. I think that would be the right word for this. I think it would be a novella. And I can't tell you what happened in this. I can't tell you anything about it because I was lost. I didn't understand it. I felt really, really exhausted by it. I felt stressed by it. I didn't DNF it, but I don't get it. I don't get it. And it was super hypersexual and over the top, and I didn't like it. And I don't recommend it, so 1 star. Then we have Jersey, a novel by Jerome Sharon, and this is about Jerzy Kosinski, who was a writer, and he wrote a novel about being in the Holocaust, and it was a huge success, and everything was great for him, and oh my gosh, he was just winning, and he was just this big news, and it comes out that he is actually a terrible person, and that he lied about the whole thing, and that all his lies were completely, like, understood to him that they were lies, and he was just manipulating a situation and a social climber, and it was just disgusting what he did. The book itself was decent. I enjoyed it. I didn't love it. I don't even know if I'd say I enjoyed it that much. I definitely thought it was a great book in the subject matter, but I wasn't crazy about the writing style. Like, I wish it had been done a little bit differently. I was sent this for review by Bellevue Literary Press, which I really appreciate. I just didn't love the writing style. I really liked the story and the idea and the plot, but the writing style in me just didn't mesh. Didn't do it for me. Gotta look at my notes for this one. Fingerprints of Our Previous Owners by Rebecca Entale. This is a novel about a young girl named Marina, and she is a maid in this resort that hires and uses descendants of slaves to run this resort, and the resort is posted on an old plantation. And this story follows the maid and her experience in this job when a black woman comes to stay on the resort, and things start to go wrong because for the first time there is a woman of color who is there as a guest rather than there as a servant, and things are just not right, and the racism gets out of control, and the things and history of this plantation and resort start to come to fruition, and it is really interesting and really dark. It talks a lot about racism and the history of the Caribbean islands and the history of slavery on the islands, and it really talks a lot about that, and it's interesting. I definitely think that it's a decent book. I don't think it's a definitely wonderful book, but I think it's decent. I think if you like to kind of go into a world that talks about racism and explores it a little bit deeper, this is a decent book for that. I don't think it's the best book for that, but I think it's okay. I definitely would say go into this understanding that it's not going to be perfect and it's not going to be the best thing you've ever read, but it's definitely worth picking up if you see it like at a thrift store or something and you're curious about it. I would say that would be the time to pick it up. Can you tell I'm having trouble breathing? I'm having so much trouble breathing. So much trouble. Wide Sargasso Sea by Jean Rhys. Now, this one, I went in with the highest hopes I could have had. I think that maybe that was my biggest problem, is I really went into this with high expectations of it being this brilliant prequel to Jane Eyre that delved into Bertha and her experience with life prior to Mr. Rochester. And while it did do that, I thought it was a little overwritten. I thought that the character named Antoinette, who is Bertha, was prejudiced and slightly unlikable, which made it harder for me to find her demise and her downfall into madness pitiable. And I really wanted to feel love and sympathy for her character versus this kind of like emptiness towards her character. Like, I just didn't feel any empathy towards her. I felt some empathy, and I felt like there was definitely a lot of sadness to her story and a lot of, you know, things that definitely went wrong. But I just didn't find myself feeling 100% like, oh my god, this poor woman, I feel so terrible. Does that make sense? I went in with such high hopes, and it fell through, and I was so unhappy. This one, again, I went in with really high hopes, and I was super excited about this book. This is The Future Home of Living God by Louise Erdrich, and I wanted so badly to love this book. I wanted so badly to love this book. And I felt like it was a knockoff of The Handmaid's Tale. I felt like that's exactly what it was. I felt like it was a knockoff of The Handmaid's Tale. Not something that was a nod to The Handmaid's Tale. Not something that was in the same genre as The Handmaid's Tale. This is like a legit knockoff. This talks about a young girl named Cedar who is pregnant, and she decides that she's going to go and meet her biological mother, who lives on a reservation, and she starts to travel towards her mother during this crisis that's starting to occur within the world. And it's written in diary entry form, which I did enjoy. And so she just goes on this journey that ends her in this situation that is directly exactly the same situation as it is in The Handmaid's Tale, living under the care of, they call it the mother figure instead of the aunts, being used for their fertility. It's a total ripoff of The Handmaid's Tale. Maybe upon a reread, I'll see more merit to it. But right now, I just feel like it was a total ripoff. And not impressed. Just not impressed. A Great and Terrible Beauty by Libba Bray. I had read this before when I was 14 or 15. I would say, and when I was 14 or 15, I probably gave it 4 or 5 stars. Like, I adored it. And I think upon rereading it, I've come to the conclusion that the reason I loved it as a child is because she goes into this imaginary world of safety where men can't harm her, and she's in this almost situation where she's seeing things that other people don't see, and she's aware of things that aren't there. And as a child, I was aware but not talking about my hallucinations. And so I felt really connected to any character that would go into a magical world that nobody believed about, because I felt like I was constantly in a magical world that nobody believed. And so I just always felt 100% in love with those books where there was this world that was imaginary to everybody else around them except for the one person who could see it. And so, for me, reading this a second time, I saw the merit. Like, I definitely think it's a decent book. I think it's a good book for teenagers. I think it's an interesting take on feminism, and I think it's definitely got some good qualities. But I don't love it, and I don't find it as amazing as I did, and I don't feel like I need it as much as I did. So, those are my thoughts on this. Evening Primrose by Kopana Maltawa, and this is the story of Masichaba, who has a childhood dream of becoming a doctor, and she ends up achieving her dream and gets into a situation where she is a doctor in South African public health. And she starts to really see the xenophobia and the racism and the class differences and what the healthcare system does to people who are poorer or who are of color. And she really starts to experience this world that she didn't know existed in the way that it existed. And she has to kind of decide whether to help those who she loves that are not being treated right, or just keep quiet and keep her job safe. And I think that this book is really good in certain aspects, but I think in other aspects it's not the best. I definitely thought it was beautiful. I thought it had some real interesting subjects. It is written in this style, so almost little vignettes. But it's diary entry form, but it reads almost like a vignette. And so it's just this really interesting story about a woman who is just really struggling with her environment and her feelings and her body and her experience, and it's really beautiful and really well done. I really enjoyed it, and I definitely think that it's one that people should read. It's being compared to Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie. I don't know if I agree with that, but I definitely would say that if you're interested in this book, I would recommend it. I think it's a good book. Then we have Moxie by Jennifer Matthew, and this one I enjoyed it for what it was. This is a story of a young girl who decides that she is fed up with the way that the system works in her school and the boys getting away with all this sexual comments and sexual innuendo and sexual harassment. And so she starts to write a magazine or a zine that is a feminist zine, and kind of calls people out on their shit and talks about the experience of the women in this school. I definitely agreed with a lot of this book. I felt really strongly that there was some great aspects to it, but I didn't feel there was diversity to it. I didn't feel there was a good representation of different types of women and different walks of life of women. I didn't feel like it was anything but white women doing something good. Does that make sense? It just didn't feel like it was all-inclusive, and that was really disappointing to me for something that was trying so hard to be so strong. I definitely think that it's a decent book, and I think that it is a good start for YA feminism. I think that it is a good start, but I think that they can do better. I think that feminism and YA as a pairing can do better. So I'm actually going to stop here, and I'm going to continue tomorrow with the rest of my wrap-up, because I still have 2, 4, 6, 8, 10 books to go, and I am already at the 20-minute mark. And I don't want to do that to you guys. So I'm going to stop here, and I'm going to continue tomorrow with this wrap-up, and that will be the top 10 books of this wrap-up, and I will talk to you tomorrow. If you guys like this video, go ahead and give it a thumbs up. If you loved it, click that subscribe button. If you have any questions, comments, or quandaries, go ahead and comment down below, and I will see you guys tomorrow. Bye!